Hello and welcome to We Learn. This is Session 5 of Society in India, Marriage and its Changing Pattern. Topics to be covered: Universality of the institution of marriage in India, age of marriage in India, form of marriage, pattern of selections of spouse, marriage rights, transfer of health and prestige that accompany the marriage, divorce and widow remarriage. So in this institution we were actually going to understand that what is marriage. Marriage is what basically a social institute. It's a relationship in the social approved. It's a relationship which is sanctioned by customs and law. It is what the institute जो एक relationship में and the two different sex comes together, two different genders comes together and tie up themselves in a relationship. This is marriage. It's a social institute which is approved by governmental approved होता है. It is considered as a child born of a marriage, considered the legitimate offspring of the married couple. So the religious texts of many communities in India have outlined the purpose and rights and duties involved in the marriage. So marriage is basically discussing about the religions. जब एक community जो होती है साथ में काम करती है, that comes into marriage part. Amongst the Hindus, for example, the marriage is regarded as the social religion's duty. In Hindu, there was considered as कि marriage is not only a social institute, it's a religious duty also. That it must be done by the person, क्योंकि एक रिलीजन फैक्टर वहां पर होता है. Then the ancient Hindu text pointed out the three main aims of the marriage. Marriage के तीन aims को define किया गया है. That is dharma, then diparaja and dirati. That is the three different aims of a marriage. Marriages basically provides the children, especially the son who were actually not carrying on the family's name, but also perform the periodic rituals also. In terms of marriage, एक इस तरीके से भी ली जाती है, that is specially meant for the son कि उन्हें वो अपनी फैमिली को कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर सकते हैं. ऐसे फैमिली को नहीं, बहुत सारे ऐसे रिचुअल्स होते हैं जिन्हें वो फॉलो कर सकते हैं. बहुत सारे ऐसे just because of married person वो उन सब रिचुअल्स को परफॉर्म कर सकते हैं. Majority of Hindu look upon the son as a support in the old age of a parents and as a most important source of the economic enrichment to the family. There are many Hindus majority who were performing or who were on that scenarios that it is always required to have a son in the family जो कि parents को old age में help कर सके, and yes at the same time it is always there कि जो economically उनको enrich कर सके. So most of the family are their side to have a child, son child. The significant attachment to the marriage is reflected in the fact that only a very small percentage of men and women remains unmarried. So एक बहुत बड़ा significance ये है that marriage occur in the society because unmarried बहुत कम लोग रहते हैं. So marriage is still considered important and necessary. If we talk about the society, yes, society के अंदर marriage बहुत important consider की जाती है. Unmarried things are not acceptable by the society. Normally, individual never choose for that. So goal of a marriage is a change, especially in the urban and educated section. It is what to have a change in their life, have a change in the scenario. It's a goal of a marriage in the urbanized area or the educated section. In the olden notions, yes, large size family are being replaced by the preference of small size family now. Marriage for the self-fulfillment rather than the primarily for the procreation or societal welfare. So जो एक societal institution parents की वजह से rituals की वजह से जो marriage conduct होती थी, अब वो scenario बिल्कुल बदल चुका है. Marriage अब एक on choice होती है, सेल्फ फुलफिलमेंट के लिए होती है, लाइफ में एक चेंज लाने के लिए की जाती है. एंड यस, इसमें किसी भी तरीके का सोसाइटल वेलफेयर इंक्लूड नहीं होता है. When it comes to age at marriage in India, in age of a marriage of India, yes, marriage is being universal and through there are difference between the various religions group, class and caste in the matter of the age of marriage. The median age of age at a marriage is lower in India. But in 1929 the child marriage resistance was passed कि child marriage नहीं की जाएगी. इंडिया में जो बहुत commonly होता था. So the minimum age of a marriage of a girl was fixed at 14 and 17 in the for the boys. No age at marriage was considered as the 15, that is what till 14 is considered for girl and 17 is considered for boys. So in spirit of the legislation, the governmental and non-governmental efforts of educating the people, there are education की वजह से they able to understand there was always a dangerous to have a early marriage. So this is now very low in India. So in 1971, census data of the material status of the women indicate that average of a marriage of a girl is more than 1/3 of the total number of district is below 15. So but yes, 1971 में एक सेंसर डाटा ने कलेक्ट किया हुआ था जिसके अंदर ये बताया गया कि गर्ल मैरिज जो है वो below 15 of age हो जाती है. In news in general, there are general reports about these things that marriages are conducting and below 15 age years girls are becoming bride. So low age at a marriage is related with the near universality of a marriage in India. So marriage is regarded essentially and a thought of the girl marriage is an entertained right for her childhood. But in the urban gap in a female age at a marriage for 1991 is 2 years. This indicates that the spirit of rise in the age of marriage is a wider gap prospect between the rural and urban. वहीं पर urban areas में there are what कि many district centers हैं जो below 15 years से girl marriage कर देते हैं, but in the rural area 2 years more. That means if it is 15, so अब rural area के अंदर वो 18 years में marriage की जाती थी. Because this has happened because दोनों ही cultures में बहुत ज़्यादा difference था and there were always in a urban and rural difference, education difference was there, understanding difference was there. So इस difference की वजह से ये चीज़ आकर हुई थी society में. Research basically suggests that in urban area and for the well-to-do in the rural area, education and need for the employment of a boys have right the age of a marriage. Yes, this would be happen that in urban area basically the education at the same time need to be make boy dependent. उन्हें इंडिपेंडेंट बनाने के लिए भी उनकी मैरिज कर दी जाती थी बहुत जल्दी. इन स्टेट वेयर द लिटरेसी रेट इज हाई, एज ऑफ मैरिज इज ऑल्सो मच हायर देन इन दी अनदर स्टेट. सो उस स्टेट जिस स्टेट के अंदर लिटरेसी रेट बहुत हाई था तो ऑटोमेटिकली वहां पर एज ऑफ मैरिज भी हाई थी. बट वहीं पर वाइस वर्सा सिचुएशन थी, अगर लिटरेसी रेट लो था तो ऑटोमेटिकली मैरिजेस बहुत क्विकली आकर होती थी. Now कितने तरीके की मैरिजेस आकर होती हैं? If it comes to the form of marriage, there was a monogamy, polygamy are found in India. दो तरीके से. Polygamy is named as the polygyny and polyandry. In ancient texts of the Hindu, we find the reference of 8 form of marriage, whereas in the Hindu's text, 8 form of marriage was occurred. Now what is monogamy? Monogamy is passing of the Hindu Marriage Act in 1955. A Hindu man was permitted to marry more than one woman at a time. We may say that those who have the means and the power to acquire more than one wife at a time was polygamy. The other important reason of the polygamy was the bareness of the wife and her prolonged sickness. This is what the Hindu men can permitted to get married more than one woman at a time. At the same time, polygams को represent करने के लिए, that means if a person have a mean and a power to acquire more than one wife, so that they can have that. Whereas polygamy is what in Islam, one of the other hand was allowed the polygamy. A Muslim man can have as many as 4 wives at a time. So they were allowed to have to come up in the polygamy relationship. It seems that the polygamous union has been restricted to be a small percentage of Muslim, which is namely the rich and powerful. So polyandry is basically very much common to the polygamy, but it is what few Kerala caste practices the polyandry until recently. So the Toda of the Nilgiris in Tamil Nadu, the Khasa of the Junsar Bawa in Dehradun districts of the Uttaranchal and some North Indian caste was basically practicing the polygamy, which is very much similar to the polyandry. That means having a more than 2 wives. The factor that related to the prevalence of the polyandry was desire to prevent the division of property within a family. That is what one of the reason कि अगर किसी तरीके की डिवीजन ना हो उसके अकरेंस में मैरिज हो जाती है. Then desire to preserve the unitary and the solitary of the siblings group. किसी तरीके की unitary या solitary ना हो जाए उस केस में भी. Name the need for more than one husband in the society where men are away on the commercial and military journey. So this things could be happened. Prevailing pattern. Monogamy is the most prevalent form of a marriage in India. It is the men who often committed the bigamy and escape the punishment by turning the loopholes of the law to his advantage. It is the wife who is often unaware of his second marriage, and even if she is aware of it, it's unaware for her to legal right and accept her fate. In terms of this is what to have that laws and legal to prevent that pattern, but the pattern is what if the man is married with the second woman, so it is not aware about. If the woman is aware about, so she can't able to do anything, and she has to accept it. So this kind of a scenario was basically there. Pattern of selection of spouses are also there. That is what firstly the rule of the endogamy include those of the hypergamy indicate the group into which a person is expected to find a spouse. Secondly, the rule of the exogamic prohibited a person from marrying into the certain group. Both the rules of the endogamy and exogamy are linked mainly in the kingship structure. Marriage in India is mostly arranged by the parents or the elders. Now what is endogamy? Endogamy is a rule requiring an individual to marry within a specified or defined group for which he or she is a member. वो जिस ग्रुप का मेंबर है वो उसी ग्रुप के मेंबर के पर्सन से मैरी करेगा. This was the endogamy. The group may be a caste, clerical, ethical or religious basis. Religion and caste is mainly there. In India there are innumerable castes which are divided into the innumerable subcastes, which is further divided into the subsections. So in that case, that is why endogamy is on the very peak. In South India, among many caste marriages with some relatives is preferred. जैसे मराठी, तेलुगु, तमिल, कन्नड़ा speaking area marry with the cross cousins are preferred. In North India, neither the parallel nor the cross cousin can be intermarry. In North India, one hand there was a tendency to marry into a village that are not further than the 12 or 13 kilometers from the one's village. So this kind of a tradition was there. Yes, cross cousins marriage or parallel marriage was not there, but the traditional village tradition was there, that village is not further than the 12 or 13 kilometers. Endogamous rules are operative in the non-Hindu sections of the population too. This is mainly into the non-Hindu section also. That is what amongst the Muslims, the Sayyids recognized as the aristocratic class and divided into the various endographic group. Many Muslim group in northern and western India consider the marriage between child of two brothers. That means if two brothers are there, their child can get married. It is held that the desire to keep the family property within a family has been amongst the one of the important reason. That is, the property of a family will always be remain in the family. That is one of the reason. Hypergamy, according to the rule of the hypergamy, the status of the husband is always higher than the wife. Those who follow this rule always seek for their daughters those men who have a social status higher than their own. So in that case, this kind of status seeking things are always there, that they always like to seek the better status for their daughters. It is a rule whereby marriage take place or is generally arranged within a subcaste between a girl of a lower social status and a boy on the high social status. So this is hypergamy, जहाँ पर सबकास्ट के अंदर शादी की जाती है और जो boy होता है that is belongs to the very good family and girls belongs to the lower family. It is giving basically the annulomy marriage. It is based on the hypergamy whereby a girl is married to a boy from upper caste, subcaste were permitted. So girl can marry to the upper guy. This is allowed. It is also given the paternomy marriage based on the rules of the hypergamy whereby a girl is married to a boy from a lower caste, subcaste were not permitted. Hypergamy is basically practiced cleanly and linkage on unequal status. That is what to get the marriage in the unequal level, unequal status. This was so because the girl to the highest group had a very little choices of marriage. They don't have that much of the proper choices of marriage. So the boy of their group could marry lower down, while they had only the boy in a group which were at least equal to their own. So that is what it is always required, that yes, they can allow to do a marriage in the lower group, but it is required to have a boy in a group and at least equal to their own. Then exogamy, it is what the exogamous rule are complementary to the endogamous rule. They are prohibiting marriage between the member in certain group. Prohibitions may be so narrow as to include those members within the elementary family, and it is what basically comes into the whom which is genealogically kingship can be traced. It is what comes into the marriage with the member of the certain groups. Two other kind of exomaries which has been prevalent amongst the several Hindu communities is what the Sagotra's exogamy and the Sapindra exogamy. Sagotra exogamy is basically twice born, and caste India, that is what apply to those who trace the descent from the common ancestors, Rashi or Saga. All these people cannot be intermarry. So Gotra is commonly used to mean an exogamy category within a jati. So that is what to defining the Gotras, what from which Gotra the person is belonging. That comes into getting the understanding about the Sagotras exogamy. The 4 clean rule and a 4 Gotras exogamy's rule was basically there. In accordance with the 4 clearance rule, a man cannot marry a girl from his father Gotra or a mother Gotra, or his dadi or his nani gotra. So that is what the rule of the Gotras marriage. Then Sapindras, that is what indicating the prohibitions placed on the intermarriage between the certain set of relatives. That is what the intermarriage in the set of certain relatives. अगर relatives में ही किसी तरीके की शादी हो रही तो that's what comes into the Sapindra. This is basically a relationship between the living members and their dead ancestors. अगर उनके living members हैं और उनके dead ancestors हैं, that is kind of relationship. So those who share the particular of the same body and people who are united by offering the pind of the blow of the cooked rice of the same dead ancestor. That is what 4 clean rule. That is Dadi and Nani. So this is what the fathers and mothers. So the person can't marry to the first, second, third, fourth person. So that is what the Gotra's part. Now what is arranged marriage? The majority of marriage in India are basically arranged. Elders who take the actions or decisions in behalf of the person, that is arranged marriage. When the marriage is fixed by the parents or elders, it is called arranged marriage. It is a contrast to the marriage by the self choices, and it is basically these type of selection of one spouse can be found together. The prevalence of arranged marriage in India can be traced in relationship to what has been said before, that is existence of the rule of the endomacy which limited the marriage alliances within the certain group, rule of the exogamy which disallow the marriage within the Gotra, regulation about the prospective and the prospective rules about the marriage with the parallel and cross cousining, and the custom which indicate the specific preferences from the marriage between certain type of relatives in the groups. So when it's discussed about to have an arranged marriage, there was few reasons. That is, there are the rules of the endogamy. That is why there was arranged marriage in India. Rule of the exomacy, यानी कि disallow marriage within a gotra. That is why arranged marriage is there. कि गोत्र में शादी नहीं कर सकते हैं सेम गोत्र में, that is why the rule is there. Regulation about the perspective, that is allowing and prohibition rule against the cross cousining. अगर cross cousining है या parallel marriage है तो वो भी allow नहीं है, उसके लिए भी arranged marriage is there. Then customer with indicate a specific preference, अगर कोई specific preferences हैं कोई type of relatives के अंदर, so that is why arranged marriage is there. If we talk about the recent trends, yes, intercaste marriage are now recognized by a law and take place on the large scale than before. If we talk about the today's scenario, yes, intercaste marriage increase. This intercaste marriage constitute only a very small portion of the total number of marriages. बहुत small number of portion of the total number was basically working. They are increasing at the lower rate, and the caste of the endogamy is still highly relevant. So the many caste organization devise all kind of strategies and to confine the marriage within their caste and subcaste. Now marriage rites. From the Hindus, marriage in the sacrament there was means that Hindu marriage cannot be dissolved. There was a reflect on the marital rites. That is, some of the essential rites are Kanyadan and Pani Gehan, Agni Pranaya, Raja Homa, Saptapadi. These are what the certain rites of the Hindu marriage. If we analyze the significance of that ritual, so they are mainly on the stress the male primacy and superiority, and reflects the notion of the transfer of a bride from her father's side to the husband's side. So this these four rites are basically discussing about this thing, that there was a shift of a girl or of a bride from father's side to the husband's side, and yes, the male superiority is basically defining into this. In some regions amongst a certain caste, pre-marriage ritual is more elaborated than the actual wedding ceremony. Amongst the sections of the Nayar caste in Kerala, the actual marriage constitute only the exchange of cloth between the bride and the groom, mutual grand lining and going around the light lamps. So this is what the basically Kerala's marriage. It is what exchanging of the clothes and material things between the bride's relatives and the groom's side. So the pre-marital ritual is basically very high according to the actual marriage in that area. Certain section of Jain communities and Sikh communities have marriage custom and rituals which are similar to those of Hindus. The core ceremonies of Sikh is Anand Karaj and the solemn in the presence of Guru Granth Sahib, the whole book of the Sikh. So this is what the ceremony from the Sikh side, they are saying this word as an Anand Karaj and taken a round around the holy book, that is Guru Granth Sahib. So the main ceremony consists the bridal couple going 4 times around the holy book. Whereas Muslim marriage is not as the sacrament, that is rather it is a contract which can be terminated. So this is what the another marriage ritual in the Muslim marriage. Amongst the Muslim, the marriage ritual shows a variations by the section and regions. Sai sector of the Muslim different from the Sunni. A sector amongst the Muslim, however, essential ceremonies of Muslim marriage is Nigah, and this ceremony is performed by the priest or Qazi. So Nigah is considered as a complete only when the consent of both the grooms and brides has been obtained. Amongst the Christianities, the wedding takes place in a church. So the exchange of a ring is the important ritual amongst them. So some sections of the Christians like but the Christians belongs to Kerala, or the Hindu rites, there belongs to the grooming, tying in a tali on the bride's neck. So the tali is a symbol of marriage status of the Hindus women in the South India. Customary marriage, this is what marriage with no rights are referred to the customary marriage. These marriage are basically based on the simple practice. Customary form of marriage are generally found among those group where divorce and secondary marriage are basically permitted. जहाँ पर किसी तरीके के rituals और rights नहीं होते, ये वहाँ पर आकर की जाती है. Secondary marriage of the widow or the separate of the divorced women is usually celebrated in the simple way. So that is what comes into the customary marriage. The transfer of wealth. Yes, marriage is also very towards the material as well as the non-material transactions between bride givers and bride takers. It involves with the few expectations the transfer of wife to the husband's family. The two major type of transfer of material wealth accomplish the marriage. In one, wealth travel in the opposite direction of the bride, and in other travels along with the bride in the same direction. So this kind of thing was in a marriage. That is, marriage is not only the relations or the societal representation. It is always there to have a materialistic things transferred to the other side also. Bride price. Tradition of a bride price is found amongst the certain preliminary tributes also. Some caste in the middle and the lower rungs of the caste ladders. So from amongst the bride prices, what this is different from region to region, from tribe to tribe, and yes, time to time. The person is somewhere looking for a cash only or for the materialistic thing, kind or cash both. So So that comes into bride price. Under the local influences of the high caste, there was this. Bride payment is what any kind of a payment which is occurred by the bride father given to or transferred to the bride husband. Practice of dowry was, yes, there was a kind of a gift which is provided to the bride on the marriage day, and this is what a kind of prestige and honor of a society. Today in the legal, dowry is considered as a banned thing. Dowry is not allowed, and what is given to the son-in-law and his parent is always enough for them, so they can't demand that. So there are the regional variations of the practicing and the people understanding the term dowry. So it is what always, and yes, there are the mainly terms and conditions which is working on the groom price. So pricing the groom also according to the groom qualifications, job, social status, regardless bride parent. So that comes into the groom price also. Some include the custom as in a dowry, which is what are the bride or grooms after marriage, how they were performing, they depends on their in-laws, festivals, these things are mainly included. Among the land owning caste of the Andhra Pradesh, as a father may give to his daughter land and jewelry, so the cash may be handed to the, or the money is deposited by the girl's daughter, fathers. The practice of giving a gift to the girl at the time of after the wedding is as considered as a gift. So that is what the practice of a dowry is. Now divorce. Possibly the mechanism of dissolving the material union has been varied the time within the communities. So Hindu marriage is in the theory of the secularism of the irrevocable. Among many non-individual caste, divorce is custom allowed. So divorce is what when the person wants to wind up their relationship, so that comes into divorce. It is basically allowed in the initially it is not allowed it, but yes, after that it is allowed it is permitted in the Indian society. Among the Muslim marriage, the contract and divorce is allowed. Muslim law provide the 4 different type of divorces, that is talaq and khul need these special mentions. That is what if you want to divorce, mention that to the party. Then widow remarriage. Certain section of the India was not allowed widow marriages. So there was always a fight between to have a widow to remarried or not. So man is obliged to marry the widow of the brother. Normally it happened in the earlier age that the men's brothers going to marry the widow. So in the many castes, Hindu widow remarriage has been customarily sanctioned and practices. Only those castes which imitate the lifestyle and values of the high caste, they don't adopt this kind of practices. In 1971, census of the India showed that there were 18 million widows as against 23 million widows. In year 1991, amongst the elderly, the percentage of widow was 60.7 and that of the widowers was 19. So yes, there are few questions which you have to do it yourself. What are the 3 forms of marriages found in India? Second is define the endogamy, exogamy and hypogamy. So this is all about for the today's session. We are winding up here. Thank you so much. Happy learning. We learn.